Hey, it's Mistress Carrie reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 4 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Image Custom Designs, who have been in the rock and roll business in Worcester for over 20 years. From full-on production and manufacturing of premium custom road cases for the touring industry, they can build a case for pretty much anything you need to move around that needs to take a beating. They've been family-owned and operated since day one. And of course, recently, they've had to pivot their entire operation because of the coronavirus. So they're using those construction skills, and they are now making the Northeast's best acrylic sneeze guards. You know what I'm talking about. The shields that every single cashier and person that has to deal with the general public stands behind now. And if you need one for your business, and you want it to look good because it's probably going to be there for a while, then you should hook up with Image Custom Designs. They'll get it custom measured, custom built, custom fitted, and they can even have it custom engraved with your company logos. I'm telling you, it is going to look awesome. You can find them online at imagecustomdesigns.com. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by RPM Dynamics. My buddy Jim Rose is the owner and CEO, and I've known him for over 20 years. And he's been in business for over 30 years. That's how much experience he has in the world of touring and pro audio. I'm telling you, he knows his stuff. And even though there aren't a lot of tours out right now, there are a lot of places that are looking to upgrade their outdoor entertainment spaces. I mean, we can finally go outside, right? Well, if you got a business and you're all of a sudden in the outdoor entertainment industry, you should probably make it sound really good. And my buddy Jim Rose can do that. He's the guy that everyone calls when they have that oh shit moment because they know Jim and they know that everything he does, he gives 110% on. So whether you're looking to buy professional audio equipment, rent it, lease it, or if you're looking to learn about it, I mean, the guy is a wealth of knowledge. Go to rpmdynamics.com and check out Jim and his company and find out if they can help you. Because if Breaking Benjamin and Chevelle and Hell Yeah and the Revivalists and so many other artists depend on him to sound good, he can make you sound good too. Okay, I am so excited for you to hear episode 4. My guest is about to be portrayed in a new film that comes out this Friday called The Outpost. It's a movie about the most decorated unit of the Afghanistan War and the Battle of COP Keating. First Sergeant Jonathan Hill, retired, I'm honored to say is a friend. He's a Purple Heart recipient and a recipient of the Silver Star. And he would be absolutely mortified for me to be reading from the citation of his Silver Star. But I want you to have an understanding about the person that you're hearing in this podcast. In part, the citation says the President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress July 9th, 1918, amended by an Act of July 25th, 1963, takes pleasure in presenting the Silver Star to Sergeant First Class Jonathan G. Hill, United States Army, for exceptional valor in actions against an armed enemy while serving with Troop B, 3rd Squadron, 61st Cavalry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division, during a violent engagement with enemy forces at Combat Outpost Keating on 3 October 2009 in support of Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. Sergeant First Class Hill exemplified the skill and bravery of a Cavalry Scout while leading his platoon in a platoon leader's absence during the Battle of COP Keating. Sergeant First Class Hill led and directed his platoon while exposing himself to a heavy barrage of enemy fire. With no regard for his own personal safety, Sergeant First Class Hill organized multiple efforts to recover fallen soldiers under effective, accurate fire. Sergeant First Class Hill's discipline and bravery bring great credit upon him, B Troop, Task Force Destroyer, Task Force Mountain Warrior, Combined Joint Task Force 82, and the United States Army. And that is just a part of the citation. His story isn't about that one day in the mountains of Afghanistan, but it's a fascinating story about a personal journey And there are so many lessons that we can all learn from. So even if you have never served in the military, even if you don't know anyone that's ever served in the military, I promise you this episode of the podcast is going to leave you in awe, and you're going to learn something from it, and you're going to take something from it. His willingness to be open and honest about his own struggles and the challenges that have come from everything that he's experienced are lessons we can all learn from. And like every episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast, in the description is a link for a corresponding playlist, which features some of the music we talk about in the episode and also some of the songs that remind me of him and all of our veterans and military personnel. So make sure you check out the playlist as well. So I'm really proud of this episode of the podcast. It's the most personal one for me so far. I'm honored and privileged to introduce you to First Sergeant Retired Jonathan Hill.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
This is Marilyn Manson, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
John, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You're in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm in Texas, but I wore a Boston shirt just for the show.
I really appreciate that. You and I can see each other while we're talking. And as soon as your camera turned on, I saw you and said, fuck yeah, he's got a Boston shirt on. Way to represent. I met you a few years ago, actually, in Boston at the Boston Wounded Vet Run. And you and I have a lot of mutual friends, but this is the first time that you and I have kind of had a chance to sit down in any kind of official capacity. So I really appreciate you making the time to sit down and do this.
It's my pleasure. You've done amazing work with veterans and veteran organizations, and it would be wrong for me to say no. It's my pleasure.
Well, I know that right now you're in Texas, and with the lockdowns and the mask wearing and all of that is kind of ramping up. How are you handling all of this that's going on right now?
Well, a lot of patience. There's some alcohol involved, and and I get a lot of support from everybody around me. So it's difficult, but if we get out and get some fresh air every once in a while, take the dogs for a walk, don't isolate yourself inside your house and stuff like that, things are good.
Well, maybe depending on how this goes, I could talk you into joining me for a cocktail in the War Room, which we do every Tuesday night at 8:30 live on my Facebook page. And that's how we're dealing with the lockdown and everything here in Massachusetts.
Consider it done.
Okay, good. So I suppose that I should start all of these questions at the beginning. This week, your life is, or I should say, a significant event in your life is going to be portrayed in a movie, which I can't even imagine what that would be like. I always said that if I were going to be portrayed in a movie about my life, that I would want Sandra Bullock to play me, mostly because I think she would look hot with purple hair. But this movie is based on a book, a #1 New York Times bestseller called The Outpost by Jake Tapper, who is a journalist, and that's what they named the movie, The Outpost. And it's got some pretty big Hollywood heavy hitters in it, including Orlando Bloom, Scott Eastwood, who was the son of Clint Eastwood, and Milo Gibson, who was the son of Mel Gibson. And it's the story of a battle in Afghanistan of which you were a part. Should we refer to this battle as the Battle of Kamdesh or the Battle of COP Keating?
I've heard it both ways so many times. I don't think it really matters, but I've really referred it to the Battle of COP Keating because Kamdesh is a larger part of the area. So it mainly happened on the combat outpost, which would COP is what that stands for. So imagine if like the state of Virginia had a battle in Roanoke, then you would call it the Battle of Roanoke, not the Battle of Virginia, if that makes any sense. So we called it after the COP. And a lot of people would understand it. A lot of COPs and bases and things that are overseas are named after people that were killed in that area roughly. So it would be more honorable to probably call it Battle of COP Keating. Keeps that person's name alive.
The movie comes out on Friday, July 3rd, and I know you've already seen it. What was it like to sit in a dark theater and watch yourself being portrayed on a big screen?
Well, it was a little odd at first, but I have a very small piece in this because I think the bigger piece of this is those that were killed. And when you're in a theater full of Gold Star families, it's very humbling. My thoughts were really focused on them and how they reacted by seeing, their husband, their son, their brother, who, not only do they know that they didn't come home, but they actually saw on film how they were killed. And that's really hard for them to be able to see that. So while it was a little awkward seeing someone play me, my thoughts were really focused on them and how they reacted because, God bless them for their loved ones who stood in front of the bullet so we could be here today.
You were in the theater with all of the Gold Star families because this movie wasn't made against their will. This movie was made in cooperation with the families and all of the people that were being portrayed in the movie, right?
That's right. Everybody, well, I'm not going to say everybody because I don't know that for a fact, but I would say a very large majority of everybody was supporting this movie. I know that the staff, when I say staff, I'm talking like from Jake Tapper all the way up to the director, to the actors, have communicated with a lot of the men that were on the ground that day. And I believe that there was a lot of communication with the families as well, because they definitely didn't want to dishonor or put anybody in a bad place, because of something like this. So they were trying to do their due diligence to make sure that everything was done properly and respectfully.
So I know this battle was 12 hours long and the movie is 2 hours long. And it would be impossible to be able to portray everything that happened in the battle in the movie, or the movie would be 12 hours long. So did they do as good a job as they could have of capturing everything that happened that day?
Yeah, they really kind of, for lack of better words, they packed about 100 pounds of shit in a 1 pound bag. So they really took some of the highlights that were the more significant things that had happened and really put that on screen. I think it was done well.
I have not had a chance to read Jake Tapper's book about the battle. Have you read it?
I read bits and pieces of the book. So basically, not to be a spoiler alert, but what's great about this is that this book and this movie was based on the COP from the beginning to the end. So it really wasn't just the battle. They kind of showed how this place was evolved, some of the transitions and the people that had been there and made some of the changes and things like that. So they crammed a lot into a small amount of time. And while we know that Hollywood does a really good job of trying to, tell stories, there are things they had to assign to other people to be able to make that action happen. For example, like, if you see somebody doing this one thing, it was important to have that in the movie, but they couldn't do it on this part because of one reason or another, but they wanted that action to be in the movie, if that makes any sense. So
it'd be 12 hours long.
It'd be a lot longer than that.
So in order for us to get to the point in your story where you're at COP Keating on October 3rd of 2009, I kind of want to go back to the beginning of your story. I know your home of record in the military was in Virginia. Is that where you were born and grew up?
No, I was born in Oklahoma. And,
really?
My old man was in the Air Force, and so the family moved around a lot. And then they settled in Virginia when I was a toddler, and so I grew up in Blacksburg, Virginia.
So you grew up with an Air Force dad. Was that who instilled the pride of service in you? And how did he react when you joined the Army and not the Air Force?
Well, my father left when I was younger, so my passion to join the military actually came from my uncle, Will, who lives in Gettysburg. And he was a Marine. Well, you never say he was. When was a Marine?
Hope still a Marine.
So my apologies to all the Marines out there, okay? But that's where I got my passion from, because at the time, when I was younger, I was on a really bad path to getting myself in a lot of trouble and stuff like that. So I got some positive encouragement, and I went ahead and joined the military, and specifically the Army, because they actually had the best offer out of all the armed forces in the mall that I went to.
When did you enlist?
1992.
Wow. I always try to remind people when they get political about any kind of military action that members of the military enlist in all kinds of administrations. And I attribute it to you signing a blank check that we would then cash whenever we decide we need to cash it. And it takes a certain kind of person to allow themselves to be put on a blank check that can be used for whatever way their country deems necessary. And you enlisted in pretty much peaceful time.
It was right after the first Gulf War had pretty much ended. And that's another reason why, I had joined too, because there was a lot of media coverage in that battle, and I thought that that's where I need to be at. That's my calling. I need to be in that stuff, so there I was in the recruiter's office.
I think that it's a really important thing to talk about, especially in the times that we're living in right now. Every person I know that is either in the military now or is served at one point or another in their life has talked about the race, the creed, the background of the person they served alongside with just did not matter. Because when you all stood on that line and raised your right hand, you were all becoming a part of something greater than yourself. So can you talk about what it was like for you to kind of assimilate into the Borg of the U.S. military and what that process was like for you when you enlisted?
Well, the first thing you're going to learn when you come into the military is you're going to learn how to be a team, because the person, he, she, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. That person next to you may or may not be the one that saves your life. So you grow to respect everybody that's in that uniform. It doesn't matter what they look like, what their religion is, what their color. It doesn't matter. Everybody bleeds the same color blood. And when you actually see that for real, it really, it sticks with you. But yeah, when you first join them and you go into that basic training, it's teamwork. You've got to learn how to work with your partner, your battle buddy, or whatever the case may be. Whether you like the person or not, you have to be that person's support, and that person needs to be your support. So that is like the first thing that's instilled into the young man or woman that is joining whatever branch that's in, that they decide to join. So learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the people around you, and in a lot of cases you prove yourself wrong, because there's some things where you think, I can't do that. That's too much. That's out of my realm. I physically can't do that, or mentally can't do that. But you do it, and you prove yourself wrong in a good way, and that's always really good for people to experience, because it builds that self-confidence. And at that time, I really needed that.
For anybody that isn't really well versed in the military and how it functions, if you could explain the difference between being enlisted in the Army and being commissioned as an officer, because I think it will come up later in the battle. I think there's just people that don't understand what the difference is. And when you rise through the ranks of being an officer or an enlisted soldier, what those job differences mean when you're actually doing the work in the mountains of Afghanistan in your case.
So enlisted folks are the freaking war fighters. We're the ones in the ditches. We're the ones pulling the trigger. We're the ones that are carrying the wounded, caring for this, whatever the case would be. Officers are charged to develop the mission, to provide that leadership, to say, this is where I need you to go. This is what I need you to do. This is why I need you to build this tower over here, so forth and so on. They're tactical planners. They do a lot of that stuff and provide the leadership that they're supposed to for us to disseminate amongst the troops, and then it just kind of keeps going downhill. Being an officer is a great thing, but as a senior enlisted retired, there was always that rivalry between enlisted and officers. No disrespect to officers, but I would never be an officer.
Well, you would know. You retired after 21 years of service as a sergeant first class, right?
No, I retired as a first sergeant, actually.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
I was a sergeant first class during the Afghanistan run. So,
okay.
Which is a platoon sergeant. So you're in charge of roughly 20 to 40 servicemen, women, service persons. We'll call them service persons.
Okay, because it was described to me that the officer worries about the end goal and the enlisted side figures out how to get
that's
there.
That's a good way to put it. That's accurate.
So you enlist and you go to basic training, and then where do you end up? Because you're active duty, which means that this is your full-time job to be a member of the Army. You're not a reservist. We have a lot of National Guard here in Massachusetts. That's who I was overseas with. But you're active duty, so that means this is your career. So where do you go first?
The first duty assignment that I went to was actually in Germany. I was part of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, which is nicknamed the Black Horse. And I had a lot of fun there. A lot of good training.
And a lot of good beer.
Yeah, it'll knock you on your ass.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, if you ever want the strongest beer, and you want it to really give you a run for your money, go to the Kreuzberg Monastery. Drink some of that beer out there, and it'll give you some things to think about. That's for sure.
I know that this podcast is going to serve as a travel guide, because between the military people I know and the rock stars that are on the podcast, they are some of the most well-traveled people I have ever met.
Yep. Yeah, that's the truth. That's where a lot of to be honest, when you watch interviews and stuff like that, and you hear about that, you're like, hey, I want to go there and see that. So yeah, you're right. But yeah, Kreuzberg Monastery. Don't forget that. That beer is real thick and it's very powerful. But anyway, so that was a lot of fun. I was only there for about a year because they were the BRAC was initiated, and that's when the government starts kind of scaling back on the military. And so our unit had been shut down, and so we spent a lot of time not just training but preparing everything to be shipped back all the equipment and things to be shipped back to the United States. So then I ended up in Fort Bliss. After that, Fort Bliss is down in El Paso, Texas, and that was with the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Man, we spent a lot of time in the field, and that's the desert. You're on the desert, so summer in the desert in El Paso is not a good time. But it's well replicated like Iraq, because they do have sandstorms and they do have this and that and the other. So the training is it can be realistic.
And you're in El Paso not realizing that your career is going to take you to Iraq. So having that training was probably really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really did. It really sets you up mentally to be able to deal with the heat. And you learn things from other people that you serve with. You're always learning something new about how you can keep something cool or keep something hot or something like that. As simple as like you take a water bottle, and it can be as hot as can be. You take a water bottle and you put a sock on it. You soak the sock in water and you just set it there, and it'll actually cool itself down. Just something simple as that. And you learn those little tricks and stuff like that, and it helps you, kind of be able to deal with those bad hot weather days and stuff. So,
well, especially when you're in a war zone, and something like being able to keep water cold may make or break your life and the success of your mission.
Sure.
Where were you on September 11th? I mean, I remember obviously where I was at the radio station. But where were you?
I was actually coming back from physical training, and I was stationed at Fort Carson at the time. And I was headed home from physical training, and
where is
Colorado?
that?
Colorado Springs, Colorado. That place is chock full of all kinds of military bases out there. It's a beautiful area. It's just a really, really nice place. I find out I was listening to Bob and Tom. I don't know if you ever remember those.
Oh, yeah.
Personalities, Bob and Tom, and it's a recorded show, so there wasn't any live feeding going on. And then, I get home and there's like look on the TV, and I look and I just couldn't. And as soon as I had looked at the TV, the second plane had plowed into the second building. And, just like anybody else, I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? And then, the phone was going off the hook saying I needed to return to base immediately. A lot of planning was going on, a lot of risk mitigation stuff was going on. So obviously all the gates were at DEFCON 5 or whatever you want to call it. And every car was being searched, and everyone was being searched from head to toe, because they didn't know if there was going to be follow-on attacks at other bases or things like that. Who knew if there was just 2 planes or was there more being planned, or the 3 planes anyway. It was actually 4, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, because there was Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, and the 2 towers.
Yeah, there was 4. There was Pentagon, the one that ended up in the field, and then the 2 in the towers. That's right. My memory doesn't work as good as it should. But anyway, got back on post, and we were planning on doing a mission. My unit got deployed to Tooele, Utah. There's some things out there that the government wanted us to really get secured. And so that was our first deployment, technically, before we ended up in Iraq.
Your story about 9/11, coming from a radio background, is exactly why we always pushed against pre-recording radio shows, because on 9/11, those pre-recorded shows are like, hey, it's a beautiful sunny Tuesday in September, and the world is going to shit, and you wouldn't have known because they were all pre-recorded. And it's just, it's just another example about why I think radio is so important, because it has the ability to kind of bring people together in a moment like that.
You're right. Absolutely right.
So 9/11 happens, and I can't believe I even have to explain this, but there are generations of people growing up that have very hazy memories of 9/11 because they were so young.
Yeah.
And I really think it's important to explain that, yes, there's a lot of video and a lot of eyewitness stories, but to remind people that nobody knew what was going on. They didn't know if every plane had been hijacked. They didn't know if there were going to be coordinated attacks on the ground. You're talking about securing military bases. Yeah. Nobody knew who the enemy actually was. And everybody's just looking around going, am I okay where I am right now? And the military at that point had to secure everything that was important.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah, a lot of the areas that, even in the areas that we were at was the security went up, and then a lot of other places, people got deployed to certain places throughout the United States to secure, certain points of interest. I can't really say what was in these areas or anything like that for classified reasons.
Listen, you can go into chat rooms on the internet with a tinfoil hat on and figure out what you guys were protecting in Utah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can figure it out. That's where they keep the aliens.
Yep.
Obviously, we know who planned 9/11, and there were obvious deployments that happened to Afghanistan really quickly after September 11th. Was your first deployment to Iraq in 2003? Was that your first time overseas?
Actually, it wasn't. I actually went with a 3rd ACR to Kuwait, and we did just a maneuver exercise after the Gulf War had ended. It's called intrinsic action at the time, and basically we just did maneuvers out in the desert to sort of let the Iraqis know that nobody's left. We're still securing the area. Blah blah blah. And that was actually my first deployment was into Kuwait. And I was there for roughly a month and a half, 2 months, I think. I can't remember exactly how long it was. It was more towards the end of the year. So that was my first actual deployment, and there was no combat. There wasn't anything like that at the time. It was just a lot of maneuvers, show of force type thing. And then Iraq would have been my second deployment overseas.
And that's when you were in Ramadi, right?
Yes, Ramadi. We actually moved around quite a bit. We were in Ramadi, we were in Hit, we were in Al Assad, we were in Aditha, a bunch of other places. So we never really stayed in one spot. We moved around quite a bit, but we ended up staying in Haditha towards the end of the deployment, which is a giant dam complex. So the dam jokes never ended.
Well, military humor is its own brand of humor, and the jokes don't end even when you want them to.
But it was an interesting deployment because that's when the IED was introduced in many bad ways, and then you heard about one, then you heard about a number of them, and became a very dangerous thing to encounter. It became really big during that time when I was deployed. We heard about the first one and how they were developing them and making them bigger and powerful and all that kind of stuff. So it was an interesting time to be there, seeing how the enemy was using some of the simplest things to make life a living hell for us.
And when you look back at military history, that style of guerrilla warfare is incredibly efficient, and it works.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how the Minutemen right here in New England were able to go against the greatest military force in that time, which was the British Army. Yeah. You can make some pretty effective weapons out of almost nothing. I mean, can you just talk about some of the things that you had seen IEDs made out of?
I mean, anything. Many of the IEDs that we had seen in that time. So I'm just talking about this time because they've changed over the years and become more and more. They would use artillery shells that they had stolen from ammo caches from the old Iraq army. So they would use a lot of old artillery shells or mortar rounds or things like that. And they would bundle them up into a big casing or whatever, or just a big mold of whatever, and it would be detonated from so many different ways. It could be a pressure plate, it could be remote, it could be wired, it could be a number of different ways. And so it was difficult at times to find the trigger person.
And you're also dealing with the heat and the environment. Can you talk about how difficult that is to deal with?
So the heat was obviously one thing. I mean, just imagine these guys and gals, you can say gals now because they're on tanks and Bradleys and things like that. So, but you know, you're sitting in what could be up to 130 degrees outside, and you're in a 20 to 70 ton armored vehicle with your full kit, you know, your plates, your gear, your uniform, and all the other things, and you're just sitting outside in one of those things in the middle of summer is it can really toy with your brain, toy with your mind. And so again, you know, you go back to the things that you had learned to be able to cope with that kind of stuff. Sandstorms were really bad. They weren't real frequent in the area that I was at. I had been in one or two of them where you had to really button up and cover up so you're not breathing in all that dust and sand. And it got so bad where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. A lot of the other elements were, one of the other big elements, and everybody will remember when I say this, is the damn sand fleas. Those things were fucking horrible. I mean, if you know, you've been on a patrol all day long and you've been through some shit and whatever, and you just want to power down and get a little bit of sleep. And as soon as you lay down, those things start biting your fucking legs or your arms or whatever. And it's something you just can't sleep through. And we tried everything to combat those goddamn things. And they were like immune to just about every freaking anti-insect thing that was out there.
I mean, I remember packing care packages here to send them over there because the guys were talking about how much they needed stuff to keep the bugs away from them. And we were sending everything that we could think of, and they were like, yeah, these fleas are the worst friggin' things ever.
We were using, you know, anti-tick, anti-this, anti-chigger, anti-that. And we were putting flea collars on our ankles and stuff like that. It didn't bother them at all. It didn't keep them away. So that was just a real pain in the ass. But yeah, just dealing with the desert and the heat and those elements and stuff like that could be pretty painful. And there is, believe it or not, there are some areas out there where the ground is so soft that your vehicle will sink in the mud. It's almost like quicksand. And we ran into that a few times. So it's just really odd what you're going to run into out there. It's always, there's always something new, and it's always a surprise. So, yeah.
There's so many different environments and kind of ecosystems there that if you just prepare for, say, desert warfare, you're not going to be prepared for everything that you're going to encounter in that region of the world.
Right. Yeah. And the training is they do the best they can to train you for all these elements that you're going to hit, because what we do is we take the folks that have been there and we bring them back. We make them trainers so they can take the experience that they had and implement it into the training that's going on for the folks that are getting ready to, you know, transition over to overseas. So they always use what they can have the best quality trainers to get the best that they can for the men and women that are going down range. Because, I mean, you're training someone that's going into a very dangerous area. So you always want to give them the best that they can.
Is that what you ended up doing when you came home from Ramadi? Did you get into a training situation?
Yeah, I became a drill sergeant.
Please tell me that your drill sergeant experience is either like Full Metal Jacket. Did you call people fat body? Is that what it's like? Because that is people's experience of a drill sergeant.
I was the nicest drill sergeant out there. I made their beds for them. I put little and I sang them good night all the time. I was the nicest drill sergeant.
You were like Sergeant Hulka. You were the big toe. Did you like that, being a drill sergeant?
I tell you, it was tough. The hours were horrible. I mean, you're talking about like 4 a.m. till midnight, sometimes longer. And with our basic training, we had one station unit training, which meant that the trainees that you had stayed with you throughout the entire training. Sometimes they're broken up. Sometimes you had basic training and then they leave to go to another place to learn what their specialty is. But our guys, it was 16 weeks straight. So you had 16 weeks of 4 a.m. till midnight. You'd have a day off here and there. So if you had to pull 24-hour duty, but it was very strenuous. Again, you learn a lot about yourself. I never thought I was going to make it through a drill sergeant school, which was basically going through basic training all over again, but worse because you're expected to know everything. And, but it was very rewarding. I did have a lot of guys that I wish would have never put a uniform on. And there was a lot of times where I had called recruiter offices to ask them what the fuck were they doing? And why were you sending me this person? And, but nothing is more rewarding when you have a parent on graduation day come to you and say, how did you do in 16 weeks what I've been trying to do for 16 years? And, you see a mom that's in tears and she says, that's the first time he's referred to me as ma'am. And it's rewarding. It's rewarding that you're able to train these men. In my time, it was just men. Now it's men and women, but and get that kind of feedback. So it was a very rewarding opportunity, and I know that I had bumped into a few of my recruits or my trainees later on in the future, and it would always be an interesting conversation. So.
Well, you were that recruit that went into the military because you were starting to go down that path. And the difference between your experience and the experience of your trainees is when you went through basic training, it wasn't in wartime.
That's right.
And now when you enlist in the military after 9/11, you knew that you were enlisting in wartime.
Yep.
And you knew that you were going through that basic training with a drill sergeant that had already been deployed, and that this information that he's giving me is real, and that this info that he's passing on is important.
And we did our best to make it as realistic as we could with what we had in our hands. We did the best we could because we knew, and we were very proud of them too. And we did make it a point, at the end, or our commander, Boffman, who was one of the best commanders I've ever served with. And he made it a point to talk to the recruits prior to us taking them into training. He was very proud of them because he knew that they were joining during a time of war, and they knew what they were going to be getting themselves into, especially with the MOS that I had, military occupation skill, which is a 19 Delta, which is reconnaissance, or Cavalry Scout is what the Army calls it. So you're going to end up being in combat one way or the other.
So you're a drill sergeant, and you've already been deployed twice to Kuwait and Iraq. How did you end up overseas again for now your third deployment? Where did you go next?
So my third one was actually to Afghanistan.
And that was in 2009 to the COP.
I just got off the trail, and I went right back to Colorado, and then ended up being deployed to Afghanistan. And these guys that were in the unit that I went to had gotten straight fucked over. They were stationed in Korea, deployed to Iraq, had to be reassigned while they were deployed to Iraq to Colorado Springs, to Fort Carson, to come back and basically get ready to get deployed again to Afghanistan. So it was just like one thing right after the next, and it just wasn't. It was tough. It was really tough for those guys. But the ones that I actually maintained and stayed in the unit, they did the best they could. They did really good. They were great for under the circumstances what they had to go through already. They did take a lot of losses while they were in Iraq. I had heard a number of different stories. Again, going back to the IED, had taken many of those their brothers' lives while they were deployed, and then they transitioned over they leave Kuwait, go to Iraq, have to come back to Fort Carson, then get redeployed again is a long journey for anybody. So, but the ones that did stay and didn't get reassigned to another post, they dealt with it the best they could, and they drove on, and they did phenomenal training.
Well, the Battle of COP Keating that the movie The Outpost is based off of and tells that story happened on October 3rd of 2009. When did you get into Afghanistan for that deployment? How long were you there before that day?
We had gotten there right around the summer of that same year. It was a long journey. We went from Colorado onto a plane, which was odd because the plane was full. We got on a plane that had already picked up Marines, so half the plane was full of Marines, and then here comes a bunch of Army guys getting on the plane with them. So there was a real awkward silence on the plane. So I don't think we just knew how to communicate with each other because we all spoke different languages apparently. So.
Well, you wear the same flag on your uniform, but anyone that's been around a group of military personnel from different branches knows that there's going to be a certain amount of ball busting and disagreement. I mean, you bring up something like the whoopee, which for the Army is the whoopee and for the Marines is a poncho liner. And that can lead to a bare knuckle brawl in the parking lot of a bar.
So, very good friend of mine. You know him very well. My brother, I love him so much. And Hannah told Hannah one time, and he still loves this joke today. We call it the whoopee because if you don't have it, you will be cold. So, I love that guy to death, and I hope he's doing well. And I hope when he's hearing this that he gets a good laugh out of that.
Well, it really is interesting to hear about the differences in service. So when you get a bunch of soldiers getting on a plane with a bunch of Marines, it's not going to be like, oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah. Right.
It's definitely going to be like, especially at that time, because you guys are all in the thick of it. And everyone is exhausted and focused on the mission and already been deployed multiple times like yourself. So you know what's waiting for you.
So we did get transitioned out of Iraq by a Marine unit. And we actually ended up in a engagement with a Marine unit in Haditha. And uniforms and branches didn't matter when that kind of shit happens. I was very proud to fight alongside Marines, and they're fucking mad dogs, devil dogs. That's the appropriate name for them. I'm telling you right now. So very proud of that I got to fight alongside with some Marines. So, but yeah, the plane ride was really awkward. It was very quiet, and so we landed in Bangor, Maine, to do a refuel, and then we ended up in one place and the next place and switched into a plane, got on another plane, and then got on a helicopter, got on another helicopter, and then I ended up on OP Fritchie to start the transition from the old unit to the new unit.
So OP Fritchie, if my research was right, was a smaller outpost that had about 2,000 feet of elevation in the mountains over COP Keating,
yeah, so
right?
OP is an observation post. It's the Scouts' bread and butter. It's what we're able to use to observe and report on any kind of movement or activity that's around us. Bad thing about it is whoever put that place there was an idiot, because the OP, you couldn't even see the COP from the OP. The job of the OP is to overwatch the damn COP to see, to again observe and report. So you couldn't support them if they got into a firefight or something like that. The OP could not fucking support them other than with mortars. And it was just a fucking huge tactical mistake. But when we were up on the OP, when we got there, it was a goddamn disaster. It was a mess. There was trash everywhere. The damn towers were junk. It was just a mess. And so the guys that were in my platoon were awesome. They were workhorses. They busted their ass and they did great things up on that OP, and they turned it into a battleship. They did phenomenal work. They used their brains. They said, hey, we need to put this fighting position here other than there because this fighting position doesn't see shit. This works here. So we had all the build. And the sad thing is it wasn't due to lack of building material and tools, because there was like $10,000 worth of tools and equipment and building material that was there at our disposal, and the prior units didn't use them. And so we were like, my guys, we need to work. And so they did, and they busted their ass, and they turned that place into a daggum battleship, very defensible. And it, because of those guys' hard work, they proved to have a hell of a fight up there on the OP during the same fight that we have at COP Keating. They had the same kind of fight up there. And it's not really talked about very much. And there was some really huge heroic actions that happened up there, but you don't ever hear about it very much.
And there weren't that many people up there, right?
No, it was kind of a smaller element. We had 2.5, 3 platoons on COP Keating. They had only 1 up on the OP. But because of the guys and the hard work that they did, they were able to defend that COP, or not that COP, but the OP tooth and nail. They did a phenomenal job. They had great leadership, and they had a great platoon up there, and they did awesome. So I'm very proud of the guys in my platoon for working so hard, and planning and designing and doing all the hard work that they did to make that OP defensible.
Anybody that Googles the places that we're talking about right now are going to see mountains and these little outposts, these little observation posts, and nothing else.
Yeah.
You guys were up there alone, isolated. My experience in Afghanistan was that I landed in the middle of downtown Kabul, and the platoon that picked me up drove me through the middle of downtown Kabul and brought me to Camp Phoenix, which was one of the bigger bases in Afghanistan, with a chow hall and barracks and a fuel depot. And it was huge, massive. Talk to me about what it's like being with a platoon or 2 or 3 up in the mountains, completely isolated, and being completely dependent on things being delivered to you via the air or, even via a convoy, because you had no other way of getting anything.
No, there was no convoys coming into that place. And you'll see why in the movie. The roads were just too dangerous. They lost a good man on the road. And I don't want to, spoil the movie or anything like that, but you'll see in the movie why we didn't do convoys. So everything had to be flown in by Chinook. And Chinooks are the ones with the 2 props on the top. And this is like a big bathtub because of the elevation. And one of the first red flags that we had was that they only come in the middle of the night. And the reason is because they would probably end up getting shot down if they came in there during the day. That's how bad red that place was, how bad that area was for aviation, for anybody. But
well, that's one of the benefits of American technology, is that you guys were able to function at night.
Yeah.
Whereas the enemy, for the most part, was not able to function at night.
There was I don't remember who said this, and it was a statement made by somebody. I don't remember who it is, but they said that the Americans own the night. So that's why a lot of the fights would be during the day. Now, there were some sporadic fights at night, but for the most part, they were during the day.
Can you describe being up there and the Chinook lands, and you get a care package from home, and what some of the things meant to you being that isolated in the mountains of Afghanistan and the things that were sent to you. And you were like, this is amazing. Oh my God, I love this.
Well, I'll tell you, we had one of the most, other than the care packages I got from my family, were always phenomenal, and you know, the kids and the stuff that we were getting and just amazing stuff that we were getting, and it was always reminding you of home and stuff like that, and it was just great. My family did a really good job of supporting me, you know, in Afghanistan, and but we did have what we called the toilet paper famine. And we ran out of toilet paper. And running out of toilet paper and baby wipes is a bad thing. So
it got you ready for the coronavirus.
Yeah, sure did.
And the run on toilet paper.
And so everybody in the platoon got on Facebook because we had the ability to get on social media. And my comment was, if everybody on my friends list could send one roll of toilet paper or one pack of baby wipes to this address, we would really appreciate it. And we basically had one Chinook full of baby wipes and toilet paper delivered to us. We had more toilet paper and baby wipes than we had ammunition.
Oh my God.
So it goes to show that the American people and everybody out there is very supportive, and we're ever so thankful for that we were able to wipe our ass with something comfortable instead of a magazine.
I bet.
Page out of a magazine.
Well, those care packages really did make a huge difference. And I know there's a lot of people listening that have probably donated to those care package drives. And so it's nice to hear how appreciated and how much you guys loved getting them.
One of the things that you would really be motivating, you know, the treats and the things are really nice. You know, some of the things that are a good idea to send is baby wipes, hot sauce, beef jerky, just to name a few things. But when you get a letter from a child that says thank you, you know, it just makes you appreciate what you're doing even more. And they always draw little pictures of flags and the guy with the crayon gun or whatever, and it really hits you hard, and you just take a minute and you sit back and you're like, you know, this is why we're doing this, because we want those young folks out there to be able to continue to live that life of freedom.
So you're in Afghanistan and your platoon rebuilds the OP. At what point did you find yourself on COP Keating permanently, or were you going back and forth?
So we never went back and forth. We had been up there for a majority of the time. And we had, and the funny thing is like we got in firefights just about every damn day, and you could time it by your watch. We'd get up and the guys would work their asses off, and then right around just before the sun would go down, somebody would start shooting at us. Everybody would go and they would get to their positions and fight back, and very proud of them that they all were just doing amazing work and fighting the enemy as hard as they could. And which was great, but not great that we were having to get in those firefights. But the great thing about it is they were battle testing everything that they had done. So they knew that their work was working, and it was doing the right thing. So our commander at the time, who was a giant piece of shit, that makes me want to punch a hole in the wall when I think about this guy. Thought that we were just living it too easy up there and lollygagging and all that other kind of shit, which was the furthest thing from the fucking truth. He wanted to transition the platoon off of COP Keating to go up there, and then we had to come down. They went to the OP and we came down to the COP. So it was just like a replacement. They wanted to rotate platoons and whatever, which to me was one of the stupidest fucking things that could have been done, because you have a platoon that's on an OP. They've already learned sectors of fire. They've already learned the egress paths. They already learned, you know, what to do when they're in a firefight, where they go, where this, that, and the other is. And it's that pattern that you're set, and it's smooth. But he thought differently. So we ended up going down to COP Keating, and 2nd Platoon went up to OP Fritchie.
Well, it would be like navigating your house in the middle of the night in the dark. And if it was your house, you would know where everything is, and you would know not to knock over the coffee table, and you know what all the noises are, and you know everything. And now you're staying at someone else's house in the middle of the night, and you hear a noise, and you get up, and it's just a completely different environment.
Yeah, so we had to relearn another environment. And then one of the things that I'll tell you is when the lieutenant and I, Ben Salentine, were coming down the hill, and we looked at the COP. That was the first time we were able to see it, because like I said, you couldn't see it from the damn OP. The first time we got eyes on it was we just looked at each other like, this is so bad. This is just so fucking bad. Number one, you don't put a combat outpost. I mean, think about a combat outpost. You put it in a fucking valley surrounded by mountains. You put it in the best tactical position that you could possibly have, which is you always want to take the high ground. But some idiot decided, hey, let's put it in a valley. And that's the first thing we saw when we were down there. And we were just like, this is just terrible. And then the place, just like the OP, was falling apart, wasn't cared for. And one of the things that it should be every soldier, Marine, sailor, airman, whatever, and Space Force.
He's using the little bunny ear quotes.
Yes. Always improve your fucking position. You're always improving your position. Don't let it fall apart. Find ways to make it better. And that wasn't happening. So we walked into another dump.
When did you end up at COP Keating? When did that switch over happen? How long before October 3rd?
It was right around the beginning. I want to say the beginning of September, if I'm not mistaken, because they wanted to make that transition at the beginning of the month. I believe that's when we were there for about a month before it happened, before the actual battle happened.
I'm looking at numbers on the day of the attack. Let me know if these numbers are right that I found on the internet, because everything on the internet is right. There were 53 U.S. soldiers and 20 ANA, which is Afghan National Army soldiers, that were on COP Keating the day of the attack, right?
Yes, and we had Latvians with us too. We had Latvian soldiers that were in charge of training the ANA. So we had 2 of them.
Okay, so that's 75 people on COP Keating. And then OP Fritchie had 19 U.S. soldiers and 10 ANA. And that was, like we talked about, that was 2,100 feet up in elevation and no sight line to the COP.
That's pretty accurate. I wouldn't count. That's what was on the post. But you can, when we talk about war fighters, you can go ahead and scratch the numbers of ANA off.
I want to talk about October 3rd, but I know October 3rd that attack wasn't a surprise, because you talk about how you were taking fire every day up on the OP. How quickly after you arrived up on the COP that you realized this was going to be a place where you were going to be tested?
Immediately, because they were getting tested while we were getting tested up on the OP as well, because we could hear them getting into their firefights, and our mortars would support them when they did. They were shooting what was called, the insurgents were shooting what was called a B-10 at the COP all the time, or they were trying to lob RPGs, rocket propelled grenades, into the COP. And so they were being tested too. But they're obviously, we had the advantage on the OP because we had the damn high ground, but they did not. So it was a lot harder for them to be able to defend and figure out where the enemy was coming from. And by the way, that stupid ass commander I was telling you about would not let those guys shoot back unless they had positive ID. So he wanted to make sure that we actually saw a person in an insurgent outfit. Positive ID to me is muzzle flash. Bullets are coming from that direction. Shoot at that person or that thing that is shooting at you. But he denied us to shoot back 99% of the time.
So you're now in a new environment. Were the guys that were on the COP, rebuilding that facility the way that you were rebuilding the OP?
They were not, because they were not allowed to. They had all the material and all the supplies, and just like we had an OP, but the commander just didn't allow it.
And there's so many things that I'm trying to wrap my brain around all of these decisions, and I wasn't even there. But you guys were supposed to be, on one hand, building this place up because you were already at a disadvantage of being in the valley, and there's not that many of you. I mean, there's only 53 Americans. And then on the other hand, you were packing up because they realized eventually that this wasn't a tactically sound base to be on. They were going to close the base, right?
Yeah. Again, another really shitty decision on some commanders' parts that they announced to the tribal leaders that we were leaving, which gives the enemy prime time to do an attack and basically tell, the locals and their Taliban buddies that they attacked us and we left because we were scared of them and all that other kind of stuff. And it becomes a recruiting tool for the Taliban. So they coordinated their attack. It gave them time and more planning, and they were able to put their thumb on the calendar on what day that they wanted to attack, knowing that we were getting ready to leave.
So was all of your stuff packed? I mean, like, I'm talking about like weapons and ammunition. Were you at a disadvantage just because you guys were preparing to leave?
Not particularly. We were packing things. We were at the beginning, before this battle happened, we were packing non-essential stuff to get rid of. That just, the last thing that they're going to start sending off is things that we need to fight with. So anything, medically, ammunition, weapons, and things like that, we're not going to send off. It was a lot of non-essential shit. But we were in the process of starting to pack a lot of that stuff up, yes.
And you know that this is a different day because you had spoken about the grooming of their tactics against your bases, that they would shoot at you for a little while, predictably, like you were talking about later on during the day. And it was a little bit of fire coming from here. It always amazes me when I talk to people like you that you guys get used to getting shot at. As someone that's not used to getting shot at, and then like the one day you get shot at, it's the most traumatic things. But for you guys, it just becomes normal battle routine that you can set your watch by it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It happened so often before this attack happened that you just kind of, it's like second nature almost, getting somebody shooting at you, because a lot of those sporadic fire pop shots and firefights, and then there was a sniper that was trying to hit people and all that kind of stuff. And then, when you hear those rounds whizzing by your head and stuff like that, it's definitely a wake up call. But you're kind of like, I've already been down that road before. So, again, you just got to rely on your training to know what to do when you start receiving rounds.
But this day, we're talking about October 3rd of 2009, but this day, that's not that.
No.
This isn't a set your watch attack.
Right. So it happened at 6 a.m, and my platoon was not on perimeter guard. It was first platoon. So they were taking and the mortarmen were taking a really hard hit from the enemy. And our platoon was getting up and getting, we were trying to figure out if this was incoming or outgoing or whatever. We were all getting out of bed and putting gear on and stuff like that so we could be ready for whatever was coming. And then I had, while they were kitting up, I ran out the door to the Tactical Operations Center. And on the way, because I was trying to get an assessment of what was going on. And we were getting it from every direction. Small arms fire, mortars, B-10. We were getting it from every direction, and it was a overwhelming amount. So I knew at that point that we were not facing this idiot in the mountains taking pop shots at us. This was a combined large scale attack.
And it's like fighting out of the bottom of a bucket.
Yeah. You walk out of your building, you look straight up a mountain. And that was all around us. So it literally was like in a bucket. Yes. Worst tactical fucking place anybody could put anything.
Why did it end up there in the first place then?
Because whoever said that was a good idea was a brainless moron. It should be in jail right now. Because the person that put that place there, the blood of everybody that's been killed or injured in that area is on their hands. I'll tell you that right now.
So there's 53 Americans. Reports are there's 300 Taliban. So you're outnumbered 6-1, and you're in the bottom of a bucket, and you're taking fire from everywhere. And you get kitted up and go out, and you run into the talk to find out what's going on. And at that point, as the platoon sergeant, what is your role at that point?
Well, because we weren't on perimeter guard, what we typically would do is the platoon would go to the guard post or the vehicle or whatever that was on the perimeter and assist them in any way they could by bringing more ammo or fighting alongside them to put more numbers in those areas or something to that effect. Try to, help with any of the firefights that were going on and or even with casualty type assistance or something like that. Helping out with the wounds or bringing in wounded to the aid station and stuff like that. So we were more of a support role initially when it kicked off, because I was trying to push guys to certain points where they needed more ammunition, because when you hear somebody screaming over the radio that they need more ammunition or they're going to die, you have a sense of urgency. You want to get it out to them as best as they can. But the problem what we were having, though, was that the enemy knew what we were doing. So they had our guys pinned down in a building. They were shooting at the doors. And then they were firing RPGs that were lighting things on fire. And so they were trying to burn us out into the open. And then there was a weapons cache from the A&A that caught fire. So there were stray rounds bouncing all over the place from that damn thing. So it was really, really chaotic. But regardless, the men in the platoon made things happen. Under the circumstances, they knew what was going on, and they wanted to make sure that their brothers were going to be taken care of. So they went through whatever it needed to happen to get the job done.
To put it into civilian circumstances so people understand, and I know that I'm up in New England saying this, but it would be the equivalent of a coach videotaping some other team's practice so that they would know how they were going to move and what plays they were going to run. So all of those pot shots and all of the fire that you guys had been taking, they were learning your choreography. They were learning where you were going to go, where you kept things, how you were going to move.
Yes.
And that is what all of that research and all of those attacks had led to up to that moment. So they kind of knew where you were going to go.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. They'd been studying for a while, not just us, but those that were there before us. They've been taking notes, and then they were getting intel from people that were inside the COP. Because we know that the A&A was, again, they were not the best of the best, and they were feeding information to the Taliban. And then we had civilian workers that were working on the COP as well that were probably like sketching things out, handing it to the Taliban, saying, hey, this is where their ammunition is, this is where this is where that is, and stuff like that. So I would assume that was going on as well. The Afghan National Army was sending the worst soldiers to our area because they're not going to, who we had in the Afghan Army were all criminals, or they were just crap and garbage. because they would send them to us, and then all the soldiers that came from wealthy families or well-known people in the Afghan country got all the cush jobs in places where they were never going to be put in a position where they were going to get shot at. So we ended up getting the garbage, and then they were all fucking worthless.
And they were not active in this firefight at all. I mean, when you're talking about personnel, you can't count on them for anything.
No, they ran off the COP and handed their weapons to the Taliban and cheered them on. There's video. I don't know if it's still out there on YouTube or whatnot, but there's video of it where they're just handing it off and they're giving them the cheering sign. Yay, go get them, blah, blah, blah. And the ones that stayed on the COP during the firefight were going through our rooms and stealing our personal effects.
It's such a modern warfare issue that you're dealing with and what you're explaining, that on one hand, you're fighting and training alongside the ANA. And if you hear someone like Dakota Meyer talk, he's been very vocal talking about the ANA soldiers that he fought alongside, that he looked at them as brothers in arms in interviews that he's done. You're also incredibly dependent on your interpreters who are locals as well. And then you've got local people working on the bases. So your trust level for these non-Americans that's working on these bases, and on one hand, you've got to trust them to work with them on the base every day. But on the other hand, you really can't trust them at all.
That's true. That's an absolute fact. But because, we were trying to strengthen relations with the country, we were obligated to have a certain amount of people that would be locals that worked on the COP to earn a little bit of money. So we didn't, in that area, the vetting process was not, there really wasn't any.
I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere, so who would vet them for you?
the corrupt people that are already there. I mean, think about this. During the elections, they had a polling station outside of our base, at the police station, and nobody showed up, but they got all the votes somehow. But not one person showed up to vote.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to function. And I bring it up because interpreters are so important in this role.
Yes.
I mean, unless you speak Arabic, and then it might not even be, there's so many different types depending on what part of the region you're in. It might not be the right
That's
dialect.
Correct. We really relied heavily on our interpreters because, again, they were the gap between in the language barrier, and then they could point out things that we're not really used to seeing with their culture that would give us a good indication on how the conversation was going, body language, what they were wearing, how they're talking and things like that. The interpreter would tell us, this guy's not happy right now. While he doesn't sound like he's not happy, but he's actually quite pissed, or this guy's. They know just by body language they could tell that they trust this person or they don't trust that person, and you need to be careful of what you're saying to them. And so that they're a great asset in many aspects, other than just repeating what you're saying in a different language.
And for you, you've got that same trust thing now with the interpreter themselves. I mean, you got to trust somebody to complete the mission and in order to protect yourselves.
At that point, you don't have a choice. It's either you have someone do the translation or you don't. And you can't draw stuff on pictures and be able to be fluent and talk about stuff like that. You really don't have a choice in the matter.
And these interpreters put themselves in a position where they're now a target because they're working alongside the Americans. I mean, that's a huge trust fall on their part.
Sure.
With you.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. They do become a target to the enemy because they think that they are traitors.
Which is why a lot of them have been able to immigrate to the United States because of their service to the U.S.
That's
military.
correct. Yeah.
Did any of yours make it over here?
No, not after that. Not after that situation. I wouldn't want. Honestly, I wouldn't want any of them to be in the States after something like that too. Because while we did have really good interpreters over there, who knows what they were saying behind the back? I had heard a number of times that some of these interpreters that we had were former Taliban commanders. And so we didn't know what to believe or what not to believe. And you hope that before they came out to where you're at, that they were vetted accordingly. But, you just had to take your chance. So no, none of them made it to the United States that I'm aware of.
Now, you knew that this was a possibility based on some intel that you had gotten from the interpreters, that this kind of large-scale attack was possible.
I was up on the OP. I had heard that there was mention of a 300 or more people were moving in from over the mountain, which meant Pakistan, and they're going to fight you. And so I passed that information on down to the commander at the time, and it pretty much didn't get taken serious and died on the vine. So I got another hash mark to the shit-ass commander that we had.
Being on this end of it and hearing this story, and I know obviously people are going to be able to see a condensed version of everything that you're talking about in this movie, The Outpost, but you guys are outnumbered 6-1. You're taking fire from all sides, outnumbered. The locals that you had been training with and working with have now given their weapons to the enemy. It's absolute chaos. I know in this movie and so many other war movies over the years, they've tried to show a person like me, a civilian, what that is like, what being in the middle, immersed in a battle is like, but I can't imagine it. So for you, how would you describe what it's like and what you were going through to me, to someone that's never experienced it?
Being on the edge of a tornado, and you don't have any control over it, and it's chaotic. It's frustrating. When you're under a large scale attack like that, you can't just maneuver guys here and try to make a tactful advance on this guy's there and blah blah blah, because you're getting hit from everywhere and you're in the worst advantage of the world. So at that point, you're going into autopilot and you're doing the best you can with what you have. But yeah, it's just I know that this reference has been used before in other battles, but it's literally like smacking a hornet's nest, and it's just chaotic all around you, and it's not fun. And the movie does one really good thing, and it doesn't glorify a damn thing. It really kind of tells you a tale about how bad things can be. And it's not a fun situation to be in when stuff like that happens. So it's not a Rambo movie either. There's not one guy sitting in a pile of brass and not getting hit once, and or that kind of stuff. And so it does a really good job of that. It's very real. It's very robust, and it's very painful to watch.
I have watched a lot of these movies with people that have served and people that have been in these situations, and it's always frustrating for them to see these battle scenes not be accurate, that someone's handgun never seems to run out of ammunition, or things explode in ways that they don't, and the noises aren't accurate. Being in a situation as large scale as that, with all of your prior experience, was it what you imagined it to be, or were you just not even thinking that at the time?
The movie does a good job of depicting what it looks like. There is some small Hollywoodization and drama that's in there, but it's not to the extent where you're like, that's bullshit, and there are things on there that aren't that are different from what the book says. And because of the amount of changes they may have had to make, or they wanted to include a certain action into the movie, but they couldn't do it this way. They had to do it that way. So they assigned that action to a different person per se. And so, but they wanted that action to be in the screen so people could see that particular thing happen. So there is some things where people are going to be scratching their head going, that's not what the book said. But in order to make a movie and cram all that into an hour, you gotta make some changes.
Did your training even come close to giving you any kind of perspective on what that day was going to be like, being in the middle of a hornet's nest?
We had really good training before we left. Our unit did a really good job of making sure we got the best training we possibly could, but not on the scale like that. No, it's hard to replicate that. Now they do. There are places that do that now and have been doing it for a while. But we were not a part of that training. I know it's used as a teaching point at West Point, if I'm not mistaken now. And so we got the best training with what we had at the time. We did train home, and then we did training at Fort Polk. We did training at many other places, but it's hard to replicate something like that. It's really hard to replicate that kind of a scenario on a large scale. So, but the training we had was the best training that we could have gotten, and it proved effective in the situation that we were at. I mean, you think about it, we had the worst odds, and we had, got where we needed to be. Could have been a lot worse. Could have been a whole lot worse.
Can you talk about what kind of communication you had available to you? I mean, you've got 53 Americans. You were in bed when this starts. Mm-hmm. You go to the command center to find out what's going on, and now you're in the middle of a hornet's nest. How do you communicate? How do you, as the platoon sergeant, know what the hell is going on and what's needed and where? And how do you keep track of your guys?
It's extremely difficult, because when you're sending guys here, there, and everywhere, they have radios too, and they're listening. And when you hear something happening here and you hear something happening there, and you want to go here and you want to help there and you want to do this and you want to do that, you don't have time to think. You just got to do. So knowing that what our part of this typical scenario would have been was to make sure that I'm getting these guys to go replenish ammo and personnel at these positions, and you really rely on communication, but it's hard to do it when you have like several different people screaming on a radio that they need help all at one time. And I hear that scream in my head often. It doesn't go away.
The screaming for ammo? The
screaming for ammo over the radio. I'll never forget hearing Gallegos screaming for ammo over the radio. He said, if we don't get ammo out to them, they're all gonna die. And I'll never forget that. That replays in my head all the time. And the thing is like I said, we were trying to get ammo out to them as quickly as we possibly could, but the enemy knew what was going on, and they were pinning us down into a building. We couldn't get guys out. We had 2 guys that ran out the door with ammunition. One was killed immediately, and the other one got a grazing wound. So, like I said, they knew what was going on, but we did the best we could with what we had.
So you're pinned down for 12 hours in this fight. And I want to bring up the numbers to give people perspective. So out of the 53 Americans, 27 soldiers were awarded the Purple Heart for wounds sustained in combat, including yourself.
Yes.
37 soldiers were awarded the Army Commendation Medal with V Device for Valor. 3 soldiers were awarded the Bronze Star Medal, and another 18 were awarded the Bronze Star Medal with V Device for Valor.
That's right.
9 soldiers, including yourself, were awarded the Silver Star.
That's correct.
And Staff Sergeant Gallegos, his Silver Star was later upgraded to a Distinguished Service Cross, along with First Lieutenant Bunderman's Silver Star being upgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross as well. And there were 2 Medals of Honor. Is this the most decorated unit in the war in Afghanistan?
So from what I understand, the unit, our unit, Bravo Troop 361, is the highest decorated unit in the Afghan theater, from what I understand. I don't know. I don't really follow that. It's hard to be proud about something like that when you still have guys that have been who gave their life, who were killed on the battlefield, but they're not wearing medals of honor. I mean, a lot of people may be upset with me when I say that, but there was an article that came out and they were saying, they're going to do a review of anybody that has a Silver Star or a Distinguished Service Cross to be upgraded to possible, a Distinguished Service Cross or a Medal of Honor. I absolutely refuse to have anything like that. If anything, just take my award away. The guys that were killed should be the ones that have the highest awards. That's my thought, and that's how I feel, and I don't really give a fuck what anybody else thinks about that.
I've been honored to meet a few recipients of the Medal of Honor, and they all talk about the burden that the medal comes with because of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were people that were killed that didn't get to come home, and that medal is a reminder of the worst day of their life, and it's very difficult for them to on one hand, you want to be proud of the medal, and on the other hand, it's incredibly difficult to do that.
Yeah, it is. It's a constant reminder. I gave my medal away to my uncle who served in Vietnam. He went through some very painful times, just like we did when he served, and he was never awarded anything. I gave it to him because I thought, he's the guy that he's the guy that encouraged me to be in the military and put me on the right path. So I gave it to him. And so I don't brag about that kind of shit. It's what I brag about is the guys that served that day, the guys that were killed. I brag about them. So it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the guys that we couldn't bring home. Everything to do with them. And everything to do with their families.
Well, let's talk about those guys, because of the 53 that you served with that day, 8 of them were killed.
Mm-hmm.
Shockingly, the number of enemy killed was about 150 out of 300. Mm-hmm. I mean, that alone shows and is an example of just how hard you guys fought. Mm-hmm. And what amazing heroes these guys are that we're talking about, the ones that couldn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
Because you were outnumbered, tactically disadvantaged, with poor leadership and bad planning, and you were still able to rain down hellfire.
I remember the courageous, heroic acts that many of them did. And like I said, I don't know if anybody could have done it better than who was on the ground that day. Everybody played a significant part. And it was a great team that day, and it was very. It fills me full of pride that I was able to say that I fought alongside some of the greatest men that's ever worn a uniform.
So you talk about Gallegos. Justin Gallegos was from Tucson, Arizona. Christopher Griffin was from Michigan. Kevin Thompson was from Reno, Nevada. Michael Scusa was from New Jersey. Vernon Martin was from Savannah, Georgia. Stephen Mace was from Virginia. Joshua Kirk was from South Portland, Maine. And Joshua Hart was from California. And that's one of the reasons why I asked you that question earlier in the interview about that melting pot at basic training, about fusing together as a unit. You were fighting alongside guys that in any other circumstance, you never even would have met them.
No.
But you all became one force that day.
All, like I said, no one could have done it better. All great guys, all different personalities, all different, walks of life, all different, raised in different households and different disciplines and things like that. But when it came down to it, there was just one team, and everybody did the best they could with what they had. And whether, like I said earlier, during basic training, whether you like the guy beside you or not, you're going to do what you can to fight for that person. And he's going to do what they can to fight for you. So it's just all about being a great team, one big cohesive team.
You got a lot of help that came in that day, whether it be helicopters or can you talk about the air support that was required being as remote as you were in that valley?
So we would definitely have Apaches come in on occasion. This was even before the battle happened, and they would come and just do like a little show of force or something like that. It was always fun to see them, and A-10s would show up sometime and do the same thing. And
that's all they do. Apache helicopters don't carry cargoes. They're not helping you to move stuff around. These are little streamlined badasses.
Yeah, it's just full of weaponry. Yeah, full of really good stuff. But then on the ballot day when we were Lieutenant Bunderman, who did a phenomenal job of commanding everybody that day, obviously notified that we were under heavy fire, and we got some Apaches that came in and they got hit really hard. And then they also made the call up higher saying they needed as much air support on station as they possibly could because they could see the numbers from the air. It was a coordinated attack throughout the entire country because all the other bases that had air support were getting hit. And so they were trying to tie them up so they wouldn't come out. Once everything came out, it was hell on wheels, that's for sure. So we had Apaches, we had Predators, we had A-10s, we had F-14s, F-15s. I don't know the difference in the Air Force, but anyway, we had an amazing group from the Air Force, and the Apaches and everybody up there in the air was doing an awesome job of supporting us. And they stayed on station. They didn't want to leave. There was one guy that stayed there, one pilot in particular, I can't remember his name, but he stayed on station for a very long time. And just, they had a refueler that was flying in circles up there and refueling some of those
what
aircraft.
I read, there were 3 Apache helicopter flight crews that were later decorated for actions in the battle. Captain Matthew Kaplan, CW3 Ross Llewellyn, CW3 Randy Huff, CW2 Gary Wingert, CW2 Chad Bardwell, and CW2 Chris Wright were all awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for conducting close combat attacks on the Taliban during the battle. And Captain Michael Polidor, who was the pilot of one of the F-15s that coordinated close air support, was also awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. So it wasn't just the guys on the ground that were decorated for their valor, but we talked earlier about Americans owning the night, flying around in the middle of the day in a valley in an aircraft is a huge, massive target.
Yeah. They got the first 2 Apaches, from what I understand, they came on station, got hit pretty hard, and they went back and grabbed some more, jumped in some other Apaches and came back out to the fight. So it's just another testament to the never quit, never leave no man behind, never leave a fallen soldier attitude that they wanted to get into the fight and stay in the fight until it was over, one way or the other. So it was just so much going on and so much coordination between, you had guys like Avalos, who was calling in artillery rounds and mortar fire. And then you had Romiche, who was calling in airstrikes and things like that. And these guys were doing it while being shot at. And you had, medics who were providing aid while being shot at. And so it was just, everybody was doing just phenomenal work while under fire. And it's just a great group that, like I said, I don't think anybody from any position in that day could have done it better than what we had.
There have been times over the years that they have tried to decommission the A-10. We had them in Massachusetts here for a while, and then they moved them to Vermont, which I believe is where they are now. And we have F-15s here in Mass. But everybody I know that has been covered by an A-10 in the air, laying down fire, has talked about the sweet sound of those engines and what that ammo sounds like coming out of that gun, saying it's the best sound in the world. Is that your experience?
Oh, yeah. So a lot of it, those guys were coming in at night or when the night was going to fall. And I remember we were trying to get, after the QRF team, it came down from the OP, and took over the positions, and we were trying to get a little bit of rest. The A-10s were flying around, and they were hitting what we call POO sites, point of origins, and where they knew that we had been taking fire. And it was just amazing to hear. We're just kind of laying there trying to sleep. We can't sleep, obviously, because of the adrenaline, but you hear that A-10 coming in, and first you hear that the sound of those engines, which is very unique, number one, and then you hear the rounds hit the side of the mountain before you even hear the gun fire the rounds. That's just how fast and amazing that aircraft is. And we had two of them on station that were just taking it to the enemy pretty good. So we were real happy to have them on station as well.
For anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, they fire 30 millimeter rounds. So if you're trying to figure out the metric system, this thing's almost as tall as a 2-liter bottle of Coke. And it's the only aircraft in history where the plane was built around the gun. In the early stages of the Air Force, they would just try to outfit a plane with as many guns and as much ammo as they could fit on it. But this gun was so awesome. They said, look, we've got this gun. Can you build a plane around it? And it holds thousands of these rounds. And when it shoots them, it actually holds the casings inside the aircraft so that they can recycle them. This thing, they call it a warthog because it's ugly, but it is mean.
Yeah.
And it seems that a lot of grunts, a lot of infantry guys have made a lot of Air Force jokes, but they will never make a joke against an A-10 pilot.
No, I won't ever joke. I joke about the Air Force a lot because I have a lot of friends of mine that serve, a lot of family that serve in the Air Force. So I give them all shit. But yeah, after seeing the amazing display of firepower and the coordinated gun runs and bomb runs and stuff that they do, and how intricate and precise that they can be, is just amazing.
What do you attribute your survival to? I mean, how do you explain that out of the 53 guys that were there that day fighting side by side, how do you explain that you weren't one of the ones that was killed in action? Because, I mean, is it anything other than luck?
That's all I can say is luck. I don't know. Due to the amount of rounds that were flying all over the place and things that were going on, it's just really all of us that didn't get become a fatality. We're all really lucky to be here.
How do you know when it's done? And I know this is a really stupid question,
No, it's not.
But you're in a battle for 12 hours. How do you know when it's over?
When the rounds stop being shot, nobody's shooting anymore. That's the best I can tell you, because even after the battle, or a day or two afterwards, we were still getting pop shots from some of the surrounding areas, and so it was over, but it kind of wasn't over. But when the rounds stop flying, it's when and you get some intel from your friends in the air that are doing a good look-see around your area to make sure there's no hot spots or enemies moving around, and then you have a little bit more freedom to say that this might be.
The Army has typically had the longest deployments, meaning the number of months spent in the country. And this happened, halfway through your deployment? So after a battle like COP Keating, you guys just don't get to go home. You guys have to stay. How long was COP Keating operational after this battle before they took it apart and you guys got out of there?
So it had been there for the COP had been there for years. We had been there for about 6 months, maybe a little less. But we, when it was over, we still had 6 more months in country. We were assigned to a new area, and we had to do different missions and meet different people and had different routes. And, we went from defending a COP to being put on vehicles to driving around in some areas where there were some pretty hot spots as well. So we still had to be in the mindset that we were deployed in a very dangerous area.
And you're not able to go home. So you're not able to attend services. You're not able to grieve. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now around the coronavirus about people not being able to mourn loss properly, that they're not able to take part in cultural and religious services, and therefore they're not given the kind of closure that's required to get over death. And you guys weren't able to do that at all because you had to stay and continue to go on missions.
And then in addition to that, you have a lot of families that are terrified because they knew by the media and things like that of what had just happened. And they knew that we were in a really bad shitstorm. So they're terrified that, that just happened and they're still staying in country. So it made a lot of families back home really uneasy. Now, they did have a small ceremony. Everybody's familiar with the cross and the helmet on the cross and the dog tags and their upside down rifle. We did have a ceremony for them on a particular day. But that was our best way that we could pay our respects at that moment. But no funerals, no like that. I know we do. I know that a lot of the guys that fought that day, they do go visit and pay respects to their resting place as often as they can, from what I understand. So that's probably, and honestly, I think the best way to honor them is to live your life the best way you can and do good things and remember them and tell their story, tell them about what a kind of a person they were and how much you honored them and when you fought with them and respect them and respect their family and just continue to do good things in your life is the best way you can honor them.
Part of honoring them is to live the best life possible. And in order to do that, you have to be healthy. There are a lot of articles talking about you being instrumental in encouraging your guys to seek mental health treatment after the Battle of COP Keating.
Yeah, I tried. So really earlier in my career, I was shamed because I wanted to go get counseling. And so ever since that had happened, I had wanted to be an advocate to make sure that people knew to get help when they needed it, some mental health or counseling or whatever the case may be, that they shouldn't be afraid to do it and they shouldn't suffer any kind of consequences because they needed an outlet. They needed someone to be an ear. They needed some tools to be able to fix their stress or their anxiety or whatever the case may be. And because when we got back from the battle, I was very adamant of making it happen because I wanted my soldiers to continue to be healthy mentally and physically. And I know you've heard it before, is if you fix this, the rest follows. And so because a lot of these guys were afraid to go get counseling, whether it be from a chaplain or a mental health professional or whatever the case would be, a lot of them were petrified about doing it because they thought that they were going to be shamed or they were going to lose their job or they were going to be made fun of, not just by the command, but by people, their peers. So I made a point to lead the way and I went to go get help myself and I told them I was going to go do it. And, part of being a leader is setting an example. You don't shame somebody. You don't, whether you like them or not, you don't, in the moment of something like that, you never call them out for stupid shit. You want to make sure that they're healthy because you got 6 more months. You want them to be an asset, not a distraction.
Is it possible to have survived a battle like COP Keating and to process that kind of level of trauma? I mean, there's no other word to describe it. Mental trauma. Is it possible to go through that without getting help?
I don't think so. I know that a lot of, I can't speak for every single person that was in the battle, but I know that a lot of the guys have sought some sort of help one way or the other. Some people do it through, horse therapy. Some people do it through hunting or whatever the case may be, but, some sort of counseling. No, I don't think going through something that bad and being able to move on without some sort of counseling is possible. And I think that, I think that most of them have gotten some sort of counseling in one shape or way or form.
There's been a lot of armchair quarterbacking or backseat driving or whatever, analyzing after the fact this battle because your unit was so highly decorated and this battle was so legendary. How do you process the anger at the fact that you shouldn't have been in that position in the first place? The number of errors and bad leadership and being able to look at it in hindsight. You guys never should have even been there in the first place. So how do you go on having lived through something so traumatic, and how do you deal with the rage?
It's really, really hard to process it because some of these people that made all the shitty decisions ended up getting promoted and are still serving in the military today, probably giving the same stupid, pathetic fucking leadership or lack of leadership, that is. So you don't have a choice. You just got to process it. You've got to find an outlet. You got to, do what you can to figure out what tools that your mind can adapt to say, I'm just going to let this go and move on the best way I can, because again, fighting something like that it is not in your favor. I'm not going to go up to, I can't go to the Pentagon and I can't go to the Department of Defense and say, well, I think this guy was a turd and he shouldn't be fucking wearing his medal, or he shouldn't be in a command anymore. They're going to be like, well, okay. And that's probably the answer you're going to get. So yeah, we were in a really bad situation, and yeah, things went really bad. But then on the flip side, if you have the mindset where where I try to do the best I can, and it's not hard to try to do this, but you'd be proud of who you fought with and who you fought beside, and you'd be proud of the fact that you saw the best of the best in some of the guys that you fought with. I mean, you just got to have a positive attitude about it. You got to try. It's not easy, but you got to try.
Well, obviously you were successful in being able to process it, because when you came home, you didn't get out of the Army. Did you get deployed again? Because
No, I stayed in. I didn't get deployed anymore. I actually, to be quite honest with you, when we got back, because of some certain situations and because somebody didn't like what I did and how I did it and this, that, and the other, had a lot of backdoor conversations, and I actually got reassigned to Fort Polk, Louisiana as a punishment, which was pathetic because those people that had those backdoor conversations don't know their head from their ass. But anyway, it actually was a blessing in disguise. I went to Fort Polk and I was able to train a lot of people that were getting ready to go overseas. I got promoted. I got put in a very trusted leadership position, and everything was actually very good at Fort Polk for me. So joke's on you.
One of the things that I talk about is the reintegration of the warfighter back into regular, bunny ear quote, civilian life, and how difficult that can be. For somebody like you that served an entire career, 21 years in the Army, and survived the Battle of COP Keating, how do you retire, put on a pair of jeans, and go back to regular life.
It's one of the hardest things a person can go through. I'll tell you that right now. When you spend as much time in the military like that, for anybody, it can be 2 years, 20 years, whatever, for lack of better words, you're institutionalized. You're wearing the same uniform. You're doing the same things every day. You're accustomed to a training schedule. You're accustomed to so many things that you're doing day in and day out. And there's a certain way of life that you're living, and then it stops, and then you got to go into another realm of where people don't understand why you do the things that you do and why you behave the way you do. And it can be really frustrating. One of the hardest things I've had to do in my career, aside from having to put brothers in body bags and talk to Gold Star families, which is very difficult. It's one of the hardest things I had to deal with was when the PA told me that I can't serve anymore because I was physically incapable of doing so. So that was tough because I knew that's something I didn't want to do. I wanted to stay in and keep going. But the transition was really difficult. And fortunately for me, I was able to get into some work where I can somewhat do similar things, but on a different capacity, if that makes sense. So I'm able to see veterans or active duty get better, make themselves better, and continue to move on and do great things in their careers.
Is there anything that civilians can do more than they already are to be more helpful in this way?
Educate themselves. But on the same token, the guy or gal getting out of the military needs to educate themselves as well. It's a 50-50. You're not going to expect somebody to come out of the business world who's been on Wall Street to come in and be an infantryman the next day, and they're doing the same thing and the lingo and all that kind of stuff. So it's 50-50. But it's all about education. Like, I think a lot of times, and I know that a lot of industries and companies and stuff out there are doing a really good job of training their employees about how to recognize what post-traumatic stress is, how to understand why we do some of the things that we do. And they're coming up with veteran programs within their companies. So those that have served can come together and be able to kind of get away just for a few minutes, just to remember and reminisce and talk about things that they've done in the military and be proud. So I think that as a nation, we're doing a much better job of it. There was a point in time where it just was like, and that guy we can't have them in our company because he's going to have a post-traumatic stress thing go on, and then he's going to shoot everybody up in the building. But we've come a long way from that.
Well, they removed the D from PTSD because the word disorder had such a stigma attached to it.
Yeah. Well, the media did a really shitty job of advertising this stuff too. And if I could, I would show you a picture. There's one thing that the media had put in, and the media drives everything fucking crazy. It's what the media is. They're like, this is the narrative we want our people to believe, not the truth, but this is what they want them to believe. So at one point there was like this picture, and I wish I could show it to you, but it's a picture of a soldier, and it says post-traumatic stress disorder on it, or just PTSD. And they had all these words of these horrible words that, like, that we deal with. So it's like pushing a narrative, anger, depression, this, that, self-harm, blah, 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 blah. And so why are we putting that in the media and not something that says this can be dealt with and it was black and white. So why not have color and words of encouragement and putting places on there on that advertisement and say, hey, here's a great place you can go to get help. No, we're just going to put these guys and gals are coming home and they're you can't trust them because they have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're just going to cause problems in your industry. But like I said, they've cleaned it up, and I think they've done a lot better job of helping veterans get good jobs and integrating them back into society the best way they possibly can. there's a lot of people, there's a lot of industries out there that are leading the way.
It would be impossible to expect you guys to function as if everything you experienced didn't happen.
Right.
No one can fathom what it was like to be up on COP Keating that day. So how could they possibly have the expectation for you that experience wouldn't change the person you became?
They can't have that expectation. They can't. But on the same token, like I said, I've got to be able to do the things that I have to do in order to not make them uneasy, if that makes sense. So I've got to be able to say, you know what? I know that I used to say this when I was in the platoon, like, you're a dumb bag of smashed assholes. So that's probably not an appropriate thing to say in the workplace.
Probably not, but depending on where you work, but probably not.
Well, that does depend on where you work, but so there's a lot of things that you've got to do in order to, make it right for everybody. But then on the same token, they have to understand that, this person has served in the military and there probably has been some traumatic times in their history. So we need to treat that accordingly. If that person is anxiety's up or stress is up or whatever, and they walk away from their desk and they're very quiet, let them go. Let them take that breather. They may need that. You know what I mean? Don't stop them, ask them what's wrong with you. There's just things that people need to be educated on.
There's also a level of experience. And I bring it up because we saw an example of that right here in Boston in 2013 when those bombs went off at the marathon finish line. There's so many first responders that were combat veterans that in that exact moment knew what that sound was, knew what those noises were, and was able to assess the situation. And everybody knows that lives were saved because actions were taken immediately because the experience level of our first responders was so high because of their service overseas. And you all bring that skill set back with you as well. So for the difficulties that you might have with the post-traumatic stress, you're also bringing this wealth of knowledge and experience that you're able to handle higher levels of stress in certain situations where you might be able to remain calm when an untrained civilian is freaking out after like a car accident or something, and it makes you better adapt at handling certain situations. Sure.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And it's just like I mentioned before, it's autopilot. That stuff doesn't go away. It's not like it's a lot of the stuff, they're not perishable skills. It's just autopilot. Sometimes if you're on the road and you see something happen, like a car accident, you're going to go help. You're going to go do what you think is the right thing to do, and you're going to help, and you're going to do something. And autopilot kicks in, and it's just it's instinct. So yes, training is valuable, not just in uniform, but out of uniform.
When you retire from the military and you become a civilian, do they pull you guys into a private room and teach you about beards? Is there some kind of veteran beard class? Because you guys have some of the most epic beards of any people that I have ever seen on the planet.
I think what it is I actually cut mine to a goatee, but I'm actually going to be growing mine back out again. So yay me. No, it's like, okay, so I've been shaving and cutting my hair like for a long time. And like one of the first things you want to do is like, I just want to let it grow out and see what it looks like for once, and you get to looking at it and then you're like, oh, that's actually working out pretty good. I think I'm just going to keep it. So, yeah. I mean, like I got my hair's never been this long before. Look at that.
I know.
So, I mean, it's like, you just want to kind of be a little bit of a rebel there when you get out. So you grow a beard, you get your hair long.
It's like taking control over those little things that you could never control before. Yep. And learning how to dress yourself, for so long, you knew what to wear at every occasion. It was picked for you. You had to do the little ruler with the measurements to make sure your ribbons or your medal or whatever were right and your shoes were clean the right way. But otherwise, it's kind of nice that you never had to think about what you were going to wear. And now you got to figure it out every day.
I'm telling you, there's some days where I walk out of the house and I'm looking at myself going, what in the hell was I thinking? It looks stupid.
I feel like that's one thing that they could do to help you guys when you get out of the military is they could pull you aside and give you some fashion advice because you never had to worry about it before.
That's true. I'll take that. That's fair.
When you look back at your military career and you look back at your brothers in arms and everything that you've accomplished, what big life lessons do you take the most? What do you look back at and say, I learned this and that really made me who I am? Like, I couldn't have learned this any other way except for the path that I chose.
That's a really good question. And I think what I took away from it is there's really no better place to learn about yourself and how much that you can truly do. Because the thing is in the military, you can't just throw your hands up and quit. You're going to do it, whether you like it or not. So you find out a lot about yourself, and you get a lot of. I don't know if there's any other place where you can learn more self-respect, where you learn, what you're capable of doing that you didn't think you could do before, and courage and respect and all the things. I mean, it's just, I don't know of any other place that could do that. I learned so much about myself when I went through basic training that I didn't think I was capable of doing a lot of the stuff. I learned a lot about myself when I went to drill sergeant school because I have a terrible memory. And you have to do a lot of memorization in drill sergeant school. And I didn't think I was going to make it through it, and I did. And so, you end up proving yourself wrong. So you just learn a lot about yourself and a lot about respect and how to respect yourself and others and things like that. There's a lot of things about leadership that you learn in the military. One of the great places for leadership, to learn leadership, is in the military.
Which is why it's such a benefit to hire veterans, because they come with those leadership skills.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And there's leaders that have spent a lot of time in the military, and there's leaders that spend a little time in the military, but they learn how to be a leader. They learn how to make things happen. But one thing I'm a very firm believer on is that one of my favorite quotes is, leaders don't create followers. Leaders create more leaders. And I'm a very firm believer in that. And there's some people out there that are wearing that rank, or they got a shiny medal or something like that, and they think that they just want people to follow them. And I think that's tragic. You should be creating people. You should be showing them what's right and creating more leaders.
With all of the sacrifice and everything and all of the creature comforts of home and everything you didn't have access to when you were up in those mountains, what are some things that you absolutely refuse to live without now because you're home now and you're a cushy civilian now? Like, there's got to be something. Like, I know some guys that refuse to take a cold shower. They just refuse because they want to have access to hot water. Or are there little creature things and you're like, oh no, I'm not going without that ever again?
That's a good question. I don't want to use a porta potty or anything other than an actual toilet ever again.
Who could blame you?
I mean, I will go piss on a tree and stuff like that, but you understand that. But I'm not gonna anything else. I'm not gonna use. I don't want to use anything other than a toilet, an actual toilet with running water. Cold shower is absolutely right. Never want to take another cold shower again. Toilet paper. We talked about that.
Yeah, you get the good stuff now, right?
Yeah, not the John Wayne toilet paper. John Wayne toilet paper is rough, tough, and don't take shit off anyone. That's really about it.
That's the important stuff.
Yeah, the shower. Johnny says one thing, and I will tell you, it is very, 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 very important. We are very fortunate to have a shower and to be able to get.
Wait, hold on. So I want to make sure people know who Johnny is. Johnny's your girlfriend who is amazing and awesome.
Yeah.
All right, and then say what she said.
Everybody needs to be happy that they have a shower. Imagine all the people out there that don't have a shower and can't get clean. So, I mean, the showers are amazing, especially when they're hot. And they really, foot powder. Love foot powder. So.
Well, you have had a remarkable life and a remarkable story to the point where Hollywood is putting it up on a screen. And Jonathan Younger is playing you. How do you feel about how he portrayed you? His portrayal, and is he handsome enough for you? Did he do a good enough job? Because he's one of the producers of the film as well.
He's co-president of Millennial Films also. What a phenomenal guy. Just a really super good dude. He actually served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. So he's definitely no stranger to wearing uniform and serving his country as well. And did a great job. We had a lot of conversations. He really, really, really wanted to make sure that everything was as accurate as he possibly could make it. We had a lot of great conversations. He really wanted to get to know who I was and the kind of person I was, and he really wanted to fill that role. He's way much of a better looking man than I am. He's a little taller, but I think he did a great job. Not just playing the role, but just the production of the movie and everything that he's done. Multi-talented guy and just a great person, great human being.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. And I know that you were born in Oklahoma and raised in Virginia, but I'm a rock girl. This is a rock lifestyle kind of podcast. And so what role did music play in your military career? Are there songs, albums, bands, artists that throughout your career, especially through your deployments, that when you hear them, you go, oh, okay, that takes me back?
Yeah. So one song in particular, and the song is called "Where the Streets Have No Name," and you know who sings that? You too, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the reason why I love the band, I love the song, and I listen to all kinds of music. I go from rap to country to classical. I listen to everything.
Well, you're in Dallas now, so if you're in Texas and you're not listening to country music, like, don't they kick you out?
I'm sorry. I can't listen to I listen to old country music. I don't listen to this new stuff that's out. I just can't do it. Can't do it. So we were on a patrol in a vehicle, and we had hooked an earphone into the mic of the headset that you would wear. That way everybody could hear the music. And that song came on. And as soon as they sang the lyrics, "Where the Streets Have No Name," an IED blew up our truck. And so we're face down into a hole. And everybody was fine. Everybody walked away from it. The design of the vehicle actually saved our lives, and it wasn't it was big enough to really put some damage on the vehicle and put us in a big hole, but not enough to really do any damage to all. I mean, we might have had a slight concussion or something like that, but
what kind of vehicle was it? Was it an MATV?
Yeah. So that's why I always remember that song, because as soon as that chorus line hit, all I heard was a boom, blackness, smoke, and we were in a hole. So that's one song I definitely remember for some reason out of my entire career, that one song.
I drove in a convoy in an MATV in Afghanistan, and luckily we didn't get hit by an IED, but that same exact thing happened where they hooked the music up through the headsets and it was Paul Simon, Call Me Al. And I will never forget driving around in the middle of downtown Kabul in a convoy with these guys that I was there in 2011 and still like we're all friends. But when I hear that song, I am in that truck with those guys and Fooch the gunner. That point when Chevy Chase is playing the trumpet in the video, he was doing that with the gun up in the turret.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that moment in that song, no matter how long it's been. And it's amazing how music can trigger a memory like that.
Huge.
Yours obviously more traumatic than mine, but
yeah, no, it's huge. Music is a huge. There was another song, "The Piano Man," that myself and my Cav Scout team had to sing on stage during what was called a spur ride. So a spur ride is sort of a tough test that you have to do to earn your spurs to wear in your boots. It's part of the Cav tradition, and one of the things that we had to do was we had to sing that damn song on stage, and we all sounded horrible. It was like 2:00 in the morning. We were tired, covered in mud, and they wanted us to karaoke that song, and it was awful.
What about songs like before, if you knew you were going out on a mission or, songs that would get you pumped up or, I mean, especially being a melting pot of a unit coming from such diverse backgrounds, like was there music that you had to learn to love because other guys in the unit forced you?
A lot of them, if they were listening to music, they would have their headphones on because I just didn't want to hear. I didn't want to fucking hear some of the music that they were playing. So I told them to put headphones on. So they probably had some choices of music, maybe AC/DC. There was a lot of heavy metal. I know that much because heavy metal has a lot of energy in it to begin with. So I would imagine that's probably a lot of what they were listening to.
I have never seen a mosh pit like Drowning Pool in Baghdad on September 11th in 2006. They were on a USO tour and they were there when I was there, and watching 3,000 soldiers release that aggression on that somber anniversary when they played Bodies. It's like I've seen the greatest mosh pits and the biggest Metallica shows in the world, but seeing 3,000 army soldiers beating the crap out of each other in Baghdad, Iraq is something I will never forget.
There's another song you just said that has a memory.
Bodies?
Yeah. Jackal used to sing that song on stage. So that's another memory right there.
Well, that's fitting because Dave Williams, another Texas guy, the original lead singer from Drowning Pool, he passed away from a heart defect that he didn't know he had in his tour bus on the Ozfest. And the last time I saw you was last year in Dallas, actually.
Yep.
And we were at the big 22 kill motorcycle ride, and I went and found his grave and went and saw him. It's right in Arlington at a cemetery. And that song was voted on by soldiers, I believe, in 2005 in Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
That was their favorite song while they were deployed. And that's how Drowning Pool ended up going out on those USO tours, because the troops love the music so much.
A lot of energy.
I think it also helps too. Don't you think, when you're listing all of those different therapies and all of those different things, they're using music in a lot of those ways to combat
there's organizations out there
stress.
that provide music therapy for post-traumatic stress. So they encourage guys and gals to pick up an instrument and play, or listen to music, or just listen to people play. There's drum therapy that I participated in with when I worked for Cohen, and the music is a huge hit when it does come to stuff like that. Because when I drive up and down that fucking highway out there called I-35.
Yeah. Your highways in Texas are a whole other thing.
I usually put classical music on because they say music soothes the savage beast, so I don't end up getting in some kind of road rage.
I want to give you a chance to promote some of the organizations that people, especially if they're civilians and they're looking to support organizations that are doing great work on behalf of veterans, or even veterans that are looking for some help and they want to make sure that they're turning to the right place. Can you give me some of the places that you would recommend that you really
So
believe
obviously
in?
22 Kill. That's one. I mean, definitely. I got my counseling through 22 Kill. Stay the course. Phenomenal. Great. Awesome. Therapist was just awesome. She really helped me get through some stuff. Then there's the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic. They provide great work also for veterans and family members. And they're doing a lot of telehealth right now, obviously because of COVID. There's so many. I've got like a list of like 500 different organizations that I could sit here and ramble off. They all do really great work. They're all in it for the same, win. And there's a lot of really good people out there that have come up with a lot of these organizations to see veterans and family members get better. This is a great opportunity for civilians to say thank you. They don't, sometimes civilians are like, I don't know how to say thank you to someone who served their country. So they go and they volunteer for an organization, a VSO, Veteran Service Organization. And that's a great way for them to say thank you. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of veteran service organizations out there that are there for multitude of reasons: therapy, emergency financial assistance, counseling, just getting out on a retreat, couples therapy. There's hundreds of thousands of them out there. Music therapy ones.
Well, it takes a huge toll on a family. I mean, you talk about the divorce rate and how hard it is on the kids and the spouse, and the whole family really serves in a way.
Absolutely. You got to think of, because like my family, my son, my daughter, and my wife, and we're getting and going through a separation and all that kind of stuff, and the toll hit them hard, being gone, and they did it. They supported me 100%, and they were always there, and the kids, a lot of separation anxiety with them because they never knew where dad was going or what dad was doing, and they were the biggest support that I had, and they suffered because I wasn't there. The spouse picks up 100%. In a relationship, it's supposed to be 50-50, right? Well, it's supposed to be 50-50. But when the service member goes down range, that spouse that's at home is picking up 100% of the duties. So she went to school, she worked full time, and she raised 2 kids. That's a fucking warrior. I don't give a shit what anybody says. I don't care if it's a man or woman that's doing it. That's a fucking warrior. And then, you have kids that don't understand. I wouldn't let my kids read the book or know what dad was doing because it would confuse them and they wouldn't understand. They do now. So yes, it does take a toll on the family. And I knew the time that my son knew what was going on and what dad was doing is when we were going home one day, and this hurts a little bit. He said, "Dad, don't go to Afghanistan. You're going to die." And so that hurt.
How old was he?
He was around 10, 11 years old. And he was hurting and I was hurting. And when you see and you hear that, you know that moment is taking a toll on the family. And but there's always good things too, because, my daughter and I used to sing a song together when I was deployed. It was a little fish song that we would sing. And my my platoon would give me shit about it because I was singing a little song with my daughter, but I loved it. I loved every moment of it. But it would really motivate me. And Lisa, who worked so fucking hard to take care of the things that she took care of and did a phenomenal work. And I came back and I was different. I wasn't the same person anymore, which caused us to where we're at today. But things are great now. Moving on with what I have, and Johnny's been great and understanding, and she's been everybody's been a great support role. Everybody has, and it's been a wild ride. That's for damn sure.
With everything that you talked about today, would you do it all again the exact same way?
Wow. Yes and no. I'd go through everything that I went through again, but there would be some different ways that I probably would have went about a few things. When you go through something like that and guys are getting killed, you wonder, you ask yourself, what if I would have just said, do this way and not that way at that moment? Hindsight being 2020, the afterthought is always great, but it's an afterthought, So I would still have joined the military. I still would have been in the Army. I still would have been a Cav Scout. I still would have done all the things that I've done, yes. But there would be some different things that I've done, and I would have scratched a few days off the calendar.
I met some guys in Iraq that worked for historical detachments that it was their job to kind of go in after the fact and try to document a battle of the scale of COP Keating, because there's just no way to kind of do it in the moment. How do you go back and reconstruct that? Because obviously Jake Tapper needed to be able to do that to go and write the book. And without that, they wouldn't have been able to make the movie. And so if you got 53 guys up in that bucket in Afghanistan, then that means you got 53 stories, right?
Well, the thing is, what I will tell you is Jake Tapper did a great job because he interviewed everybody. He interviewed everybody he could possibly interview. And he read the sworn statements and he read the investigation. He went there and he did all that kind of stuff. Now, a lot of people will disagree because he's never served his country and he's never done this or something like that before. But I think he did a good job. I think he did his due diligence in making the movie the way it is. There are some out there that only interview a handful of their friends and want to smear everybody into the ground and say they did better than you, which is horse shit. But I think that this is you're never going to have a true story about this unless you were actually there. And the thing is what I have found is that after the battles, as you go on, sometimes you forget things and sometimes you remember things, and it can go back and forth. So it's hard to really depict accurately exactly what happened from moment to moment to moment. And everybody has their perspective of what happened on that day, whether it's, right, wrong, or whatever. And but it's when you watch the movie, you're like, well, they didn't put this in there. Well, they didn't put that in there probably because you forgot to talk about it when they were doing the interviews. But now you remember it because you saw it and it sparked a memory. If that makes sense.
I'm just amazed at how open and honest and how willing you are to talk about what has got to be one of the worst days of your life. I mean, I'm honored that you've taken so much time to talk to me about it and to be so vocal and open about your struggle afterwards. I mean, on one hand, how is anybody going to learn about it in society if you're not willing to talk about it. But on the other hand, you're talking about one of the worst days of your life. And so it's got to suck to sit there for as long as we've been talking and get peppered by my questions. And to be so eloquent and open about it, you really should be commended for your openness and your honesty.
Well, I appreciate that. Your words are very valuable to me, and and they're very kind, and I appreciate that. But the thing is there's some people, like I said, there's some people that want they want to make sure that the people out there understand what happened and what we go through and how we deal with it and things like that. Because a lot of people don't want to talk about it, and they say, a lot of people there that their parents were in Vietnam, and so they sit there and they won't talk about it, and then that's how they deal with it. But I found through counseling that sometimes you do need to talk about it. You need to get it out in the open, and the people need to know what happened. They need to know what happened because they need to know that there are men out there that have served. There are men and women out there that have served their country that have done phenomenal fucking things in the battlefield, but yet they walk silently amongst us, and they don't want. And like me, I don't want my name on the wall. I don't want, attaboys, and I don't want all that kind of stuff. But it's like me who wants to put those other guys on the wall and say, hey, this person did wonderful things and stuff like that. The in what we have going on right now and the times that we have been, and in the last 10 years, or the last 20 years specifically, it's a lot of people don't understand what men and women do day to day. And I've explained it in my last employment when I was briefing people, that they just don't understand that this guy and gal gets up 5 o'clock every morning, and then they go to PT, and then they train. And no, they're not punching in a time card and then they're leaving at 5 o'clock to come home to have dinner with Johnny and Susie. Sometimes they're there at 8, 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes they're traveling to another place in the United States to do training for 30 to 60 days, or they're gone for a week at a time, or they're gone for the weekend, or just something like that. So it's not a 9 to 5 job, and people don't understand that. So I think that it's important to educate people about that kind of stuff and how we deal with things outside of the military and our transition piece, and to have a better understanding.
Well, I think anybody that listened today that has never served in the military, I think couldn't help but be appreciative of your service and sacrifice and everything, your dedication, because we've all benefited from it, those of us that stayed home. And now, like the guys that I met overseas, I feel like it's my responsibility to have their back here the way that they had mine when I was visiting them. And we outnumber you 97-3 when it comes to civilians versus veterans. And so hearing someone like you talk about what it's been like helps everyone, but I know it helps me, giving me a better perspective about how I can be a better citizen and how I can be more active and take a more active role in my society. And we need to be doing that too, especially now with the way, and I don't just mean with the virus, but I mean with everything going on socially and politically in this country right now. It's incumbent on everyone to pull their weight, because there have been so many that have sacrificed so much already.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I think that in some cases, in some aspects, it's really, 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 really sad to see what the fuck is going on in our country right now, especially with all those that have served their country and have gone through what the fuck they went through for everybody's freedoms. And then you see what's going on. It's disheartening, and it's disgusting, to be honest with you. In all aspects. I'm not talking about one situation. I'm talking about everything in a whole. It's just, it's hard to swallow. It's hard to see.
Well, society is being pulled apart by these extremes on the outer edges. And there's so many Americans that are stuck in the middle that are just trying to get up every day and do the right thing. And it's becoming more difficult. And everybody needs to take a more active role. And
Sure. Yeah.
Until you've had an experience like yours, which is rare, or an experience like mine where I got a little bit of a glimmer of what life is like in another place. I've said it before. I won Powerball being born a girl in the United States in the era that I was, because I very easily could have been born a little girl in the mountains of Afghanistan, where my life wouldn't be anything like what I've been able to accomplish because of this country and because of what opportunity and freedoms it's afforded me. And so it's almost worthless for me to buy a lottery ticket. And I have that perspective, having seen it firsthand. And I know that I've already won the lottery just being born where I was,
Absolutely. I agree.
And it's like
100%.
we need that reminder every now and again.
I think we all just got to learn to. I think society has to learn to respect each other again. I think the biggest problem that we have in society is it's media driven and it's social media driven. There's too many people that get behind a keyboard that are so used to disrespecting other people without having the consequences of getting their face punched or getting their teeth knocked out. And so I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah. If you're going to say the shit, you got to be ready to get your teeth knocked out, says the girl sitting behind the microphone.
So no, if anybody wants to challenge me, I'll give my address. I don't give a shit. But there was a saying in a movie that said, "Don't write a check your ass can't cash." I don't remember what movie that was from, but I've always liked that saying as well.
Well, I'll end it with saying that your ass cashed some serious checks in your life. And I am so grateful for you and your friendship and your service, but also just your openness and your vulnerability and the fact that you are so willing to talk about the things that you've experienced in your life and the lessons that you've learned. You're continuing to lead by doing that. And you should be commended for it, even though I know you hate compliments and commendations, but you are a rare breed of person.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you having me on and giving me this opportunity. And I appreciate all the things that you're doing in the veteran community and bringing awareness to our nation about the topics that we've discussed, and things that are very important to all of us right now. So you're a very integral piece of this puzzle that we're all trying to figure out. So thank you for what you're doing.
I'll never listen to Where the Streets Have No Name the same way again. And that's the beauty of music, is that it has the ability to attach itself to memories. And, that's the beauty of this podcast, is that we all have that music thread and that music in common. And no matter how different the rest of our lives may be, that there's always that common thread, that we all have that similarity and that love of music and its ability to have an effect on our lives. And it keeps coming up over and over again in the podcast and in the conversations, that's the beauty of it and why I love this new outlet that I have, and that I can say fuck.
Yeah. The powerful word.
The powerful word.
If you ever get a chance, listen to George Carlin's bit on the word fuck.
Oh, I've heard it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's hilarious.
That bit that he did about the 7 dirty words that, whatever, when it came to broadcasting, it wasn't exactly accurate because it's all in the context too, but it's pretty good.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You take good care.
Well, there he is, First Sergeant Jonathan Hill, retired, who is going to be portrayed in the new film, The Outpost, that is in theaters this Friday, July 3rd. And, of course, the Battle of COP Keating is also the subject of the book by Jake Tapper of the same name. He is just such a great guy, so open, so honest, and I am honored to know him and call him a friend. So please pass this episode along to all your military and veteran friends and civilians alike. And click subscribe. If you liked what you heard, don't miss an episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast. You get new episodes every Wednesday, but some surprise episodes are coming, and you don't want to miss them. Leave a 5-star review if you don't mind, and a comment, and don't forget the corresponding playlist that's linked in the description. You can find me online on Twitter and YouTube at Mistress Carrie, and Facebook and Instagram at Mistress Carrie WAF. Meet me for a cocktail in the War Room every Tuesday night at 8:30 Boston time on my Facebook page. And thanks to Image Custom Designs at imagecustomdesigns.com and RPM Dynamics at rpmdynamics.com for sponsoring this week's podcast.
To celebrate joining Pantheon Podcasts, Rock Camp, the podcast, the official podcast of Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, is giving away a guitar signed by Mike Portnoy of Dream Theater, Marty Friedman, formerly of Megadeth, and legendary shredder Zakk Wylde, plus our rockstar counselors like Vinny Appice, Monty Pittman, and more. To enter to win, simply follow, rate, and review our podcast on your preferred platform, and that's all you have to do. For more information, go to rockcamp.com/podcast.